Okay, people, today we got a bunch of new Donkey Kong Bonanza previews. Nintendo flew a bunch of people out to their different headquarters around the world and gave them 3 hours of playtime with this game. It's not quite a final build, but it is, I think, a more finalized version, certainly than what I played back in April, where Pauline wasn't even in the game. But also, I think it's a more finalized build than the demo that is popping up at Targets around the US now. And either way, the press did get access to new areas that you can't get to in that demo within the time limit. So we're going to be reading through a bunch of the previews for this game, generally gushing about it because as the days get closer to launch, I mean, we're in July now, we are officially in DK July. My hype for this game just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. And while there are some, I guess, a little bit more negative things that a few, previewers said about the game, overall, I feel like the hype for this game is just like, it just keeps getting higher and higher as we get closer to launch. Nintendo did also confirm to the press at these events that the DK Bonanza development team is the, quote, same one as Odyssey. I have some thoughts on that, but at the very least, it is EPD8, which is nice to finally know. But of course, if you are new here and you enjoy Nintendo Switch 2 and DK Bonanza coverage, I would appreciate you liking the video and subscribing. Let's get into it. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the channel. I hope your morning is going well. Wanted to hop on here and just read through a bunch of these previews. I've selected a bunch of different little paragraphs from different previews. Of course, these will all be linked down below so you can see the full previews for yourself. Same thing with any footage I use in this video, notably from Video Games Chronicle, IGN, and Nintendo Life, I want to say. Those are the three we're pulling from, and then we'll also take a look at Eurogamer's preview here as well. But starting off, I wanted to take a look at the Video Games Chronicle preview for this game. I think they had a lot of interesting stuff to say about it. So first things first, and we'll talk about this more towards the end of the video and what I think it really means, but basically to every preview person that got hands-on with the game, the Nintendo reps were saying like, hey, it's the team behind Mario Odyssey. So that's an interesting marketing thing, because before Nintendo was being very hush-hush about it. I wonder if it's not to say that the previews were bad back in April, but they weren't exactly as glowing as I think some people might have expected. I myself had some issues with it when I went hands-on back then. Now they're changing their tune. They're like, actually, hey guys, it is the Odyssey team. Which Andy Robinson even notes here in his preview today that for him, the hands-on back in April didn't quite hit that very high bar. And that's kind of how I felt about it up until the Direct. Up until the Direct, I was like, I mean, Donkey Kong Bonanza, I know it's going to be a great game. I wasn't like through the roof excited for it as if it were a new game from the 3D Mario team. However, based on this 3-hour demo they got, I think a lot of people are getting a little bit more positive towards it overall, though there are definitely still some nitpicks that a couple of them go over that we'll take a look at here. I really like what he wrote here. He said, destructible environments already feel pretty PS2 era to me, and combined with large, complex environments to explore, full of various different collectibles, Bonanza has an almost nostalgic feel like a classic platformer remade in 2025. That right there, like, as someone who loves collectathons, as someone who grew up with Mario 64 and Sunshine, of course, but also Banjo-Kazooie, like, having a game that literally feels like it's from that era, only Nintendo, man. Only Nintendo, for some reason, does these types of games. Like, I feel like you see some indie games trying to replicate this exact style of platformer where you're, collecting a ton of things, but for some reason only, really not even just only Nintendo, really only this team within Nintendo that does 3D Mario and now Bonanza. I guess I could also attribute this a little bit to like Forgotten Land, but that feels a little different. That's more like a 3D World style thing. For him to be just saying like, yeah, this feels like a classic platformer remade in 2025, that statement alone has me just so excited to play more of the game. And speaking of Banjo-Kazooie, he literally name drops it here. He says, quote, its opening stage features adjustable water levels that reveal pathways to new areas, numerous NPCs to converse with, countless challenge mini-games, and puzzles related to Bonanza transformations. So that's interesting. I mean, pretty early on, then you're going to be getting all of your Bonanza transformations, the ostrich, the zebra, and the DK Bonanza, right? The Kong Bonanza. So if in the first level you're doing all that, that's kind of interesting. I mean, I know you have the skill tree and you're upgrading it throughout the game, but to have seemingly all three of those early on, that's kind of surprising. I thought they would unlock kind of slowly throughout the game, but maybe that's not the case. But he says here, quotes, if this was rebranded as a modern Banjo-Kazooie, you wouldn't need to change much. I love Banjo-Kazooie. I have always been a huge Banjo-Kazooie fan, especially the first game. I like Banjo-Tooie as well. And even Nuts and Bolts, I think, has its merits. But for them to just be saying, like, hey, Banjo-Kazooie. Because, I mean, even in that reveal trailer, specifically all the NPCs, I think, and how they're designed, it feels very much like a game made by Rare, which to hear that it is in fact the 3D Mario team, that in of itself isn't surprising, but it is surprising to see how much of Rare's influence and just Western design has been put into this game, to the point where I had friends speculating that it was like Next Level or something like that, right? Like just a completely different non-Japanese developer, because it feels so Rare coded. So very, very happy to hear that you could rebrand this as Banjo-Kazooie, and that has me so excited. He also said here, quotes, "In the 3 environments we played, there was constant variety in gameplay, with side-scrolling stages, mini games that challenge players to smash down a house as quickly as possible, boss encounters, and NPC towns with unlockables to purchase and challenges to complete." So, I mean, I've been on a huge completionist streak recently. If you miss it on my other channel, I did a 100% review of Welcome Tour, completed that game, but also Mario Kart World. DK Bananza, I mean, it's literally designed for someone like me who likes seeing everything a game has to offer, to collect every little Banandium gem, right? So to know that there's constant variety here, I'm really curious, like, what percentage of this game is going to end up being side-scrolling, because I can't imagine it's, like, even 5%, but maybe like 10% maybe? I don't know. They haven't shown too many. Of course, there are some that are obvious homages to previous DKC games, but yeah, knowing that there's like this constant variety, having this little challenge where you're like breaking down a house, that's a fun thing, right? You're destroying everything. Why not destroy a house? Maybe an NPC asks you to like destroy it so they can rebuild or something. I don't know. And then of course having the NPC towns with all the, you know, costumes and stuff that you can purchase is pretty cool. Now, he does go on to talk a little bit about how the destruction mechanic doesn't feel particularly unique in of itself, but down here he talks about one specific puzzle that I thought sounded kind of interesting. He says, quotes, "Enemies and obstacles feel unique, with DK able to smash bits off of them to reveal their vulnerable skeletons." That's how the combat works, right? You can like throw the chunks at them to break off parts of their armor, or even pull off chunks of their rocky bodies and then batter them with it. There are also examples in Bananza's early stages of how destruction could evolve into a novel puzzle tool, with one sequence requiring NPCs to be escorted to a destination by chiseling a path for them around perilous water, or another segment where DK has to tunnel underneath deadly lasers to reach a goal. So, I mean, so far, all like the demo footage you see is people on a timer, so they're just kind of running around aimlessly, like just destroying everything as fast as possible. That's what I did for the most part in my demo back in April, because I was like, okay, I have like 10 minutes with this game. Let's see how far I can get, right? But seeing that design implemented more methodically, more thought to it, right? Having puzzles like this where you're, you know, making a little path out of your destruction around water. I guess if you maybe break too much, water will pour in and you lose the challenge, right? It's gonna be cool to see how this team really implements that. Like, I'm gonna see what the very specific applications are of the destruction physics, and knowing this team, I mean, I'm sure they're gonna have some really cool stuff in there for us. Next up, we had a Logan Plants preview from IGN. Shout out to Logan. I've met him a few times now. Cool dude. So he mentions something specifically here. Highlighted here. Yeah, he says, quotes, "I'm here to tell you that Donkey Kong Bonanza feels like the sequel to that formula," referring to Odyssey, "that we've been clamoring for. It just happens to star the giant monkey instead." I think for me, and as well as some others, right, like, the hesitation with Bonanza, at least up until that direct in June, was like, oh man, I want 3D Mario. It doesn't quite feel like what we're seeing is reflective of like the high bar that the Mario Odyssey team has set with Mario Odyssey, but even previous 3D Marios before that, like DK Bonanza, I think inherently was fighting an uphill battle, or is fighting an uphill battle, because it isn't a 3D Mario game, but like it has a lot of that DNA, but also I think a lot of us are just like, oh god, where's 3D Mario? But Logan here is saying like, yeah, this feels like the sequel to that formula. And I mean, yeah, when I did my hands-on preview back in April, like I even said, like, specifically the movement really feels like it is an evolution of Odyssey. Not necessarily in that you're throwing a cap and jumping on it, but like the way you have so many options with a chunk jump, and then you can surf turf and ride on it like a Beyblade. Like, there's so much movement in this game that you can just, I mean, that you can tell it directly comes from the Odyssey team. So in that way, it is very clearly an evolution of Odyssey. He also had this to say, which had me very happy. So he's talking about how there's like the fully 3D model of the map that you can open up wherever you are. You can open it up, drops a few frames. We'll get to that, but based on whatever destruction you have, it shows that in the map, which is pretty cool. And he says, quotes, "That map helped us track down challenge rooms, which rewarded us with either golden bananas or a ton of cash. And unlike Odyssey, there's no more wondering if you have a moon left to go find inside, waiting for Cappy to tell you, because the entrance to each bonus room tracks how many golden bananas you found and how many more are waiting within. We saw 3 of these rooms in Bonanza's opening area, with each focusing on either platforming, combat, or destruction." So I'm just happy that there's actually tracking for that. DK Bananza seems to be doing all the things right that Mario Kart World didn't in terms of how the free roam was structured in that game, where they didn't track, I mean, they literally didn't track anything other than just the, raw number of P-switches and Peach medallions. Bananza, for one, it has like that music player, which Mario Kart World is lacking, but also it looks like it will really track everything that you collect, and that was an issue with Odyssey. Like, oh god, did I get the moon in here? I know there's a couple of like the challenge stages in that game that I ended up just redoing several times, or not even several times, but like I would go back into it when I'm doing my 100% cleanup and just be like, did I get the moon in here? And you just have to replay the challenge again, which is fine because Odyssey's fun, but it was kind of annoying. So to know that they actually fixed that with the challenge rooms in Bananza is pretty nice to hear. Okay, next up we have Jim Norman's preview from Nintendo Life here. A few things I wanted to highlight. First things first, he says Donkey Kong Bananza has the hallmarks of an all-timer, and I can't wait to dive back in and see all of the Kong tints that he missed. So right there, gotta appreciate the pun. All-timer game on our hands. We will see. He talks a little bit about the co-op here, which I haven't seen too many people highlighting, but to get there first, we need to read here. He says, quote, DK's iconic movement is back in full force too. He still packs his signature roll and the climbing, turf, surf, and transformation-specific abilities like Ostrich Bananza's Flutter make exploring each stage a breeze. It didn't feel quite as deep as Mario's Cappy movesets, but an in-menu skill tree tease that there is an arsenal of slick skills at DK's disposal. All you have to do is unlock them. So yeah, I mean, I think starting out the game, it might not be as in-depth as Odyssey is, which, to be fair, inherently is in-depth immediately because there is no unlock system in that game. But I'm hoping by the end of Bananza, when you're, finish the game, going back for all the Banandium gems, like, I'm hoping at that point the movement is so crazy because you have everything upgraded. You have like longer timers on everything, right? So we'll see how it ends up being when you actually finish the game. But early on, he's saying it doesn't feel quite as in-depth as Cappy did in terms of what you can do with the movement. But also, I'm going to leave that stuff up to like the speedrunners to really figure out the tech for this game. No offense to him, but I just feel like a certain type of player will break the game and figure out the movement in a certain way versus another person. And I'm going to leave that to the speedrunners and like the more hardcore crowd to do. But he does say here, that said, at no point did Bananza feel like a game for the hardcore only. The challenge is there for those who want it, and I saw DK bite the dust many a time, but the option to follow the critical path and not dive into all the digging and terraforming is a perfectly valid one too. And he talks about co-op here, which I thought was interesting. In fact, the co-op feels made for this experience. While the wonderful Alex from Nintendo Life here and I made a mean DK and Pauline team, the mode will be much better suited for those who want to play with a little one in tow, letting them bark out commands, pick up collectibles, and attack enemies with Pauline in mouse mode, while you focus on the slightly more intense monkey business. So yeah, in the direct, they reveal this Pauline co-op mode where she's on DK's back and using the Joy-Con mouse, she can like sing and like put physical words and attack enemies with it, and there's like different types of materials she can do it with. This is a mode I feel like most people are not ever going to try out, although it does have game share, so you can do it online, which is nice, unlike, well, Odyssey can now, but at launch it couldn't. So even Odyssey, I don't think many people use the Cappy co-op. This I'm pretty excited to check out with Olivia because she doesn't really play games like that much, and most of what she does play is like more kind of just casual puzzle games. So 3D platformer is not really her strong suit. We'll play like Forgotten Land, we played together. The Kirby games we'll do, but this of course is a little bit more intense. I actually really like it. They're saying right here, maybe it's better to play with a little one. I think that would also extend to people that just don't really play games that much in general, or maybe have like kind of more limited experience with it. I can do all my DK platforming, going crazy, playing at my own pace, and she doesn't have to worry about keeping up. She can just sit on my shoulder and just, bark out commands like Jim says here. So I'm actually pretty excited for the co-op in this game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. He also talks about something here that I was really worried about based on my hands-on in April. I talked about it in depth in my preview back then, but he says, quote, my biggest reservation after going hands-on with the game at the Switch 2 experience back in April was its performance. And while I was pleased to see that things had definitely swung in the right direction in the months since, I couldn't help but notice a couple of small issues remains. The camera still has a nasty habit of getting a little sticky when smashing up walls down under. The frame rate wobbles in certain inconsequential instances like opening the map, and on a couple of occasions the sky itself took on an earthy hue when DK stood awkwardly on the threshold between a cliff face and a freshly dug tunnel. So if it is the Mario Odyssey team, it feels a little janky in that regard, because like the 3D Mario team, they don't really make janky games. I guess the last one would have been Sunshine, right? Galaxy, 3D Land, 3D World, and Odyssey, these are all like very tightly designed games with no real jank to them. DK Bananza, I think inherently, because of what it is when you're digging down and the camera's going to get all weird, like it inherently is going to feel a little bit less polished, I want to say, than a 3D Mario game, just because of what you're doing. And I was hopeful they would fix that. It doesn't seem like they did too much. but at least it is in a little bit more in the right direction. I've seen people saying, like, based on the target demo, the frame rate is definitely better there as well. It was really the opening the map. That was what I noticed when I played it. Like, when you open the map, because it's loading all of your destruction in real time to, you know, reflect it in the map, the frame rate was like, I'm not even joking, like probably 15 FPS. Like it was really bad, the frame rate when you're opening the map. But as they say here, it's inconsequential to the greater experience. It is just for the map. And what, you're going to spend maybe 2% of your total game time in the map? Not even, probably. Like you're not going to be on there too much. It is unfortunate. There's no denying that. And I still hope that before the game releases, they can fix that. They even state here that the build they played isn't finalized. So there is still a chance that it gets fixed by launch. Maybe a post-launch patch could fix up the frame rate a little bit. Not a huge deal, but is certainly a little disappointing that, you know, we're, you know, switched to 4K 120 hertz screen and we're still struggling to hit like 30 when you're opening a map. I don't know. It's a little, you know, unfortunate, but not a huge deal. Okay, and then the final preview I wanted to read through here is from Alex Donaldson over at Eurogamer. He says Donkey Kong Bonanza reaches for smashing variety and a rare energy. He talks a lot about how the destruction in the game persists depending on what you're doing. If you leave like a layer, it'll reset back to normal, but as long as you're still on that sub layer, the destruction will persist that entire time, which, I mean, we were kind of just talking about that with the map, but it's still really cool. He says here, as you dig through the layers, a surprising world is revealed beneath. It's not all mines, but a variety of biomes. There are beaches, lush jungles, more traditional mines, and even a poison swamp for all you From Software sickos out there. He also says here, my impression is that the main thrust of the game's narrative will be quite breezy, so the main story mode to finish the game. You can probably get enough Bananza gems to progress just by exploring each zone. Hidden away within each area, however, are harder challenges. Having gotten quite comfortable with the game's mechanics, I tore through 2 story-critical bosses in about 30 seconds apiece. That's a little too fast, I feel like. At least with Mario Odyssey, like, I guess that's the issue with having a more combat focus, right? Because you're actually like throwing chunks at the bosses. In Odyssey, it's more about waiting for them to do their thing so you can, you know, expose their weakness. 30 seconds is really quick to beat a boss in this game. But then they say here, then I toiled for 10 minutes on a fiendishly difficult optional side challenge for just 1 extra Bananza gem. Completionists will find plenty to do. So as long as there's a good balance there, right? Like if the story is fine and if the main bosses are easy, that's fine. But you need to have those extremely hard platforming challenges and other various challenges that are optional for the completionists to do, for the people like me, for the people like you watching this video most likely. I want to have some really hard stuff in this game, and usually 3D Mario games have that, right? Like they're like even like darker side of the moon. Like there's usually something in a 3D Mario game, or really most Nintendo games, honestly, that just like really like kind of pisses you off in like a good way though, right? Nintendo games usually aren't too tough to get through just to roll credits. It's when you want to do that 100%. Even in a game like, you know, the Yoshi games are always said to be like, oh, these are baby games, so easy, hold your hands. Going for 100% in those games is much more difficult than a lot of other things, right? So as long as there are these extremely challenging optional challenges, I'm fine with the main story being a little bit easier. Although, like I said, 30 seconds for beating a boss, that seems a little fast. Not sure about that, but 10 minutes for a single challenge. I like to hear that. So yeah, the previews are really good. A few nitpicks from, you know, people talking about performance and a few other things, but overall, very positive previews. I cannot wait to play this game. I do want to quickly talk about the developer of it, though. A bunch of these outlets were reporting, but reading from Video Games Chronicle here, Andy Robinson once again, he says, quote, it's finally confirmed Donkey Kong Bonanza was developed by, quote, the team behind Super Mario Odyssey. Nintendo won't say more than that, such as who the key staff or even the game's director is, but it's exciting news nonetheless. So Nintendo's been very cagey about who's developing this game. They've been doing that with a lot of their games over the past several years. I mean, they've kind of always done it, but recently I feel like it's gotten much more attention of like, why aren't Nintendo revealing their developers for their games? And Bonanza, I mean, immediately, it's clearly the Odyssey team, at least in terms of like the raw DNA there. I had speculated that maybe it was a co-development project with Nintendo Software Technology, of course, who did Bowser's Fury. I want to be real, like, people are talking about this, and like that's cool that we finally know it's the team behind Mario Odyssey, but what does that really mean though? Right? Because I think if you ask Nintendo, and a Nintendo rep was trained to say this, they would say that the 3D Mario team was behind Bowser's Fury, which we kind of know is, you know, certainly there's staff there that worked on it, but it was NST. That was a Nintendo Software Technology project who later has now done Mario vs. DK and F-Zero 99. So I still think there is still a very good chance that even if it's not a co-development project with NST, maybe it is actually a splinter team within EPD8 where you have the senior staff working on 3D Mario, and then Bonanza was more of like a, I don't want to say side project because that makes it feel lesser, but sure, yeah, a side project for like the newer staff to really learn and just, kind of, build it that way. Because as I always do on this channel, I'm thinking about the future. Like, I cannot fathom why Nintendo would make a 3D Donkey Kong game if they didn't also have a 3D Mario game, at least somewhere pretty far along in the development pipeline. I didn't cover this last week, but Kiwi Talks here said something kind of interesting. Kiwi Talks, not someone I've really mentioned too much on this channel, I don't believe. Seems to have good sources. He seems to do a lot of interviews with like Retro Studio staff and stuff like that. So people, kind of take his word with a little bit more merit than others. He said, quote, DK Bananza is being developed by a new team that was spun off from the Odyssey team. There are a lot of younger devs in the Odyssey team that grew up playing the country games and wanted to make one. I've heard the Kremlings are making a return. 3D Mario is still on the way. That was on June 17th. So that could still be true. Like, it can still be the 3D Mario team, the Odyssey team, EPD8, while still also being new talent, new staff, while the veteran staff are working on 3D Mario. Maybe that's cope. Maybe I'm just like so in my head of like, we need to get a 3D Mario in the next like 18 months, 2 years, whatever. But I just cannot believe from like a business standpoint they would do that after Odyssey sold, 30 million copies or so. We will see. I still think it is fundamentally an EPD8 game, but I think there's definitely some room for interpretation of what they mean when they say it's the Odyssey team. I think the director will be different. I think it'll be a lot of staff that were not in the credits of Odyssey. I think it could still even be a co-development project with NST, but that's all speculation. We will not know probably until July 17th or maybe a little bit before that when the game leaks early, that kind of thing. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Who do you think is truly behind this game? I mean, Nintendo's saying it's EPD, it's the Mario Odyssey team. But what does that really mean, though, Nintendo? We need to know the director. We need to know all of these things. Come on. But that is going to do it for today's video. Just wanted to hop on here and gush about DK Bananza, read through these previews, and talk about who the developer actually is. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What is your hype level for Bananza? I'm kind of in waiting mode, man. I mean, there's some stuff coming out before that I really want to get to, like Tony Hawk and the Patapon remaster. But Bananza, that's like my eyes are on Bananza. And then beyond that, we have Mario Party. In August, we have Kirby coming out. Like, it's a good time for 3D platformers, especially with DK Bananza and Kirby specifically. Like, that's a nice little combo there. I know Kirby's an old game, but just the new content there is going to be a lot of fun. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch 2 and Bananza content coverage. I would appreciate it if you liked the video as well. Until next time, folks, peace.